Africans from Egypt to Zimbabwe to South Africa and Angola across the continent are discussing the departure or demise of the former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, who died out there in Singapore with very mixed legacy. Some say he was a hero, others describe him as a villain. We are going to be looking at the legacy of the former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. We equally are going to be looking at Cameroon's judiciary, whether they are a potential source for social conflicts in Cameroon. We also are going to be looking at what force the lawyers in the nation as game changers. We are very, very akin to what happened in the Northwest and Southwest region, that the ongoing Anglophone crisis was triggered by the lawyers, common law lawyers. We equally are aware of the fact that the Bar Association of Cameroon has called for a strike action for lawyers, though there was a meeting between government officials with the president of the Bar Association, giving the impression that the planned strike action has been called off. But we look at the potential for lawyers to play the game-changing factors in Cameroon. We are going to be discussing this with our panelists, three of whom are already in the house. One is on his way to join us in the course of the program. Mofo George is in the house. He is a social entrepreneur, an expert on issues of development. Good day, happy Sunday, and welcome.
Thank you, Kum, and thank you for welcoming me, and good day to the viewers of Prime Television.
What caught your attention in the news this week?
Yeah, I would want to say, looking at what is happening in South Africa, especially with the Africans or the black people fighting against each other, and it took my mind back to 1983, whereby Nigeria had to also chase away some Africans. And if those of you can remember, there is a popular back today they call Ghana Must Go.
Mm-hmm.
And the victims at that time were Ghanaians. And they had to use those bags to gather the few property they could gather to move. And today that particular sack or bag is called Ghana Must Go. So what is happening in South Africa is very, very unfortunate. Especially when I thought that after the Nigerian incident and what is happening today with the signing of the Africa Free Trade Zone thing, where Africa should be moving towards integration, we are still talking about xenophobia. It is very unfortunate.
It's very, very unfortunate. Equally in the program with us is Mohamed Suley. He's from Kumba, SDF Kumba 2 districts. Good day and welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kum. Greetings to our favorite listeners outside there. Greetings to my panelists. Greetings to Mr. Leo. You're all welcome on board my Media Prime.
The SDF for Kumba has extended the lockdown. Some people say it's good, some people say it's bad.
Well, that is my own catchy story. I think it is an unfortunate situation that an administrator can go to that extent to say that he's imposing a ban for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday to, I don't know his aims and objectives for doing that. I don't know up to now, I don't know. But that will not have any effect on the struggle for ghost town in the Northwest and Southwest region. He's an administrator, he's taking his stand to discipline the people of Kumba, to know that he too can take a decision to remedy the situation if possible.
Okay, you think that was a wrong decision, but he's embarrassed that people are hearkening to a call.
No, he is the boss of the division. Mm-hmm. Maybe after the consultation with his security people, administrative, other stakeholders in the division. He has decided to come with that decision to extend the ghost town for Saturday and Sunday, but with exceptions.
Yes, so
administrators, security vehicles, ambulances, pharmacies, and even those who are going for burials. So there are exceptions to his ban, but at the same time, it has a negative effect on the people of Kumba because people never expected such a ban to come, and most families are hit hard because of that decision.
Okay, equally in the program with us is Solomon Agborem, all the way from Limbe. You left Limbe today. Give us a picture of Limbe, but in passing, you are also the editor of the Sun newspaper, the Star newspaper. You equally are very, very close to the chiefs of Limbe. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Kumlen. It's a pleasure to be in the House of Commons this afternoon, and delighted to meet Mr. Moforo and of course Mohammed Sule coming fresh from Kumba, of course. I think that if you ask me, Limbe is a calm city of friendship and so many opportunities, and I think coming fresh from the seaside resort city, we are also sympathizing, particularly with those in Kumba, because myself, I was taken aback that there is a prefectorial order from the SDO of Meme asking people to stay home Saturday, Sunday, knowing fully well what has been across the week for the people. I think this is penury. This is a decision which should have been overturned by the governor of the Southwest region, who is the supervisory authority, I should say, their hierarchy, the hierarchy of
the boss of the SDO.
Because I also remember sometime the onset of this crisis in Manu Division, when the SDO, Joseph signed a prefectorial order asking people to leave their communities. Of course, the governor of the Southwest region, Bena Okalabilai, asked him to overturn that decision because it was creating panic. So I feel that same action should have been taken to put order. We're talking about here people at home, people bearing the brunt of what they do not know, and somebody taking his position, somebody's taking his office to cause more pain on the people. I think this is not right. As a human rights defender and journalist, I think that this is not correct. And I feel that the authorities that be should have called him to order. The authorities that be should have looked at another means by way of imposing their presence or their authority. But asking the people to stay home Sunday, Saturday, which is the only day which they feel that out of the so-called lockdown, they should be at home. This day they should go out and get things for themselves and also communicate and also be part of the society. Of course, this day is also reserved for people to worship. You know, you've asked people not to worship, which is out of what Cameroonians should benefit as far as the constitution of this country is concerned. So I feel that we were taken aback from our own end, from our own city. But of course, if you ask me so close to the chief, yes, the National Caravan for Peace and...
Yeah, because that was my second question to you. So what were they discussing?
What they were discussing, they were joining their voices to the clarion call that has been from the east, north, south and west of this country, from Tinta in Akwaya to Takwa in Upper Banyang, and of course you go down to Bekumu in the Dian area. The same call is that of dialogue. The same call is that for the authorities that be should put an end to the war. The same call is for the fact that children are dying, be it from the state defense forces or the non-state armed groups. They are the children of the traditional rulers. So they feel that this is the time for them to also come out and say no to all of this and say yes to peace and say let us give dialogue a chance. So they converge on Limbe on their feet lap. You know, they have been touring other regions and
they have been to the west.
Yesterday they have been to the west, they have been to Littoral, they have been to the east, they have been to the south. And so it was a turn of the southwest wherein they came together close to 200 of them.
Tomorrow I don't know whether you are still going to be in town. That is what we are discussing tomorrow. And equally, we are going to be looking at the decision of the senior division officer for Meme to impose a 2-day lockdown on the people of Kumba, who, as we speak, should be in their respective homes, respecting the orders of the senior divisional officer who wants to prove that he has authority over Mehmet Division, the representative of the head of state of Cameroon, His Excellency President Paul Biya. But let us open our discussions with our topic for the day, looking at Cameroon's judiciary. When you peruse the way our judiciary has been functioning in Cameroon today, Mofo George, what comes to your mind? This is an arm that aptly represents what it should be.
The perception is always different from the reality. Now, ab initio, the notion of the judiciary is an issue of balance, fairness, arbitration, and all of that to create a society where there is harmony. And again, you see, you have consciously used the word judiciary, knowing very well that it's a whole system that begins from, I will call, not in any order of hierarchy, the simple court registrar, or even the police constable, right up to the Supreme Court judge, passing through the other courts, first instance, high court, and all of that. Then don't forget also there is what they call the Council of Magistrates at the level of the presidency. And then there is also the military justice, which is also not actually part of the Supreme Council of Magistracy, but also constitutes the judiciary in this country. And we will also want to include people of not necessarily legal background, but advocates of human rights and so on. Now, the question is Cameroon's judiciary a core source of socio-political tensions?
Yes.
I definitely, I'm not a disciple of those who answer questions yes,
yes
or no.
You can analyze.
I'm just an analyst. But you see, again, I'm sure you are inspired by the latest declaration of the Bar Association threatening or announcing some form of dropping their weapons to defend people in court in their normal tradition of advocate and defense.
When we look at the ongoing socio-political tensions in the northwest and southwest region, if the lawyers were treated in time, I'm sure we will not be where we are today.
Of course, you see again. What I'm saying is that is another source.
When you look at the mutiny that took place at both Kondingi and in Boya.
And don't forget, in 1989, before 1990, the majority of those people who initiated what happened then, and we landed into what became known as the year of transition, where multipartyism was also generally, the trial of Barrister Yondo Black. So they have all been the source of, but I don't know whether we want to, because that word, sociopolitical tensions, is a bit, because those who are doing physics, when they say something is tense, it means that it makes everyone to stand on their heel and it's like ready to explode. But again, I think the judiciary is not an exclusive, it's just, they are just most of the time reactive to certain things which are absent. I just want to think that
they are one of the factors that contributes to.
And they are just playing their role in what they call, one politician always talk about the Republican system. And in the Republic we have the government, the parliamentarian and the judiciary. So they are just playing the role because either one party is trying to make the whole thing sound unbalanced, and then they are just playing the role of a mediator or arbiter, so that the power.
The judiciary is playing the mediating role.
They are playing the role to regulate. They are playing actually the regulatory role.
Let's look at the Anglophone problem that we are talking about. This issue was tabled, I'm sure, before the Minister of Justice. Do you think he treated it so fast?
No, the problem with Anglophone lawyers as concerned the judiciary. First, the judiciary is a third tier of government, third arm of government. yeah, the judiciary is supposed to be an independent arm of government. But in our circumstance in Cameroon, are we sure our judiciary is independent? And secondly, one day the minister just got to say he's going to harmonize our judicial system. Harmonizing, bringing the civil law of the Francophone.
So it created a tension between the Anglophones and the
Anglophone lawyers have English background of common law. The Francophones English background of civil law. You see, he said he want to harmonize it. And he started now bringing in civil law magistrate in common law courts and common law magistrate in civil law courts with two different diametrical parallel lines that will never ever meet. So you see that contradiction. That thing affected the judiciary. And again, our judiciary affected the judiciary, and because the judiciary is being controlled by the executive in here, the executive has to see over our judiciary. That's why I see the higher judicial council, which is presided by the President of the Republic, which appoints, promotes, and demotes punishment of judges, have a say on magistrate in this country. So the magistrates are hands are tied. They can't take any decision. And that's why I say the lawyers themselves, they have fought. It's all wasted effort. It's an effort in futility. It has not yielded any dividend. They have kept quiet. Because the judiciary is not independent. If the judiciary was independent, magistrate will have consciences. But here, no. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. So what do you do? So the judiciary is tied up. These guys.
Okay, I want us to look at the judiciary and the socio-political tensions we have in Cameroon. Let's take the case of the post-electoral crisis. I'm talking about the Kamtos and co. Even we can go way back with the SDF, where they have been saying that their victory was stolen. No, but it was at the level of the Supreme Court, and today we have the Constitutional Council. You think that the judiciary is playing?
Let me come in.
Yes.
The SDF, I think, fully demonstrated maturity, excessive maturity, by restraining himself and not pushing people to the wall as Kamto did. You see, Maurice Kamto, for me, I have only one problem with him. I say he declared election before the proclamation of the results. And secondly, you know that in this country we have 10 regions, 58 divisions, 373 subdivisions, and it's only the CPDM party that was presented in all the subdivisions. So on what premise is it based on and finding to arrive as a that you want the election?
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Do you have the impression that politically speaking, the judiciary has given itself a political color where they are no longer trusted?
Oh yes.
Well, coming in, Leonard, I think that literally the judiciary is independent, but in the application, in our context in Cameroon, it is not. You can quote me any day, any time. For the fact that, just to cue in with Mohamed Sule, who said that, and we all know that the President of the Republic is the chair of the Higher Judicial Council, and don't you forget, he is also a political figure. He's also the chairman of the ruling party. So you cannot say that a decision which is very sensitive and which is ought to be taken by a particular judicial arm, he will not be of the know. He will not be of the know. I beg to differ with those who think that the judiciary will act without the knowledge of the head of state. He is aware. In fact, he is informed on a daily basis of what happens in this country, from the least community to the highest. Now, what we are saying here on this platform is not to castigate the judiciary of being the core source of the social political tension in the country. But we are saying that the judiciary should strive to be independent as it ought to be, to say no to certain political decisions that may alter a particular judgment because you are afraid not to be fired, you are afraid not to be sent to Furawa, because if you take this decision which is not in conformity with the ideology of those whose interest needs to be protected, I think in such a case the judiciary has failed to be independent. And Cameroonians are saying that this is their only hope, that if I am cheated, I can take the fight to the court. But as we speak, you cannot be so sure that if you get your case to court, you will win because this is your case. Definitely, he who has the money will call the shots. He who knows the people around, he who knows the state council, he who knows the president of the court of first instance will definitely call the shots. So we are saying on this platform that the ordinary Cameroonian should be able to feel confident that after the politicians may have deceived us, after the legislatures may have not passed the laws that we need to govern us, at least we can carry it to the judiciary to mediate, to judge who is right and who is wrong. But the context today doesn't permit the common Cameroonian. People are even cheated. They are afraid to take the case to court because they know that it will just be a waste of time. They know that it will just be manipulation. They know that it will just be all more expenditure on you who can benefit your family back at home. So we are looking at that Cameroon where people can say that the judiciary is our only hope. And you can carry your file there, and you can carry your complaint there, and you can be confident to meet a state council who will say, this matter, you have been cheated, and you must get compensation for it. But with the political system so strong on the other arm of government, we all know that it is difficult to say that any of those arms are independent in this country as of now.
Okay, let's look at intercommunity tensions. I will cite the case of the people of Menchum Division, where constantly you have a wealthy Fulani man who has cattle, and then you see the way the judiciary always mediates, gives the impression that he who has more money can pay for it. And we have cases in Douala where an individual comes and buys a whole community, and these issues are settled through the judiciary. You see, they create pockets of tensions, social tensions amongst the people. Are they doing the job enough?
And that is
to ensure equity.
That's the crook of the question there, socio-political tensions.
Yes.
You see, that word is a combination of sociology and political science.
Yes.
And when you look at political science, it's generally treated as the use of power and its consequences. And you look at sociology is the social interaction between two entities, which are usually human beings or human groups. Yeah. Now, most times people look at the judiciary from the perspective of either being freed from going to prison or going to prison. And they don't see the judiciary as also an agent of development. Yeah. Because you just cited the cases of where money has been used as a weapon to manipulate the weak against the powerful. But it's unfortunate that there are even some persons, in fact, I don't know how many persons watch a certain documentary that came out from a news item in one of the TV stations in Cameroon where a French woman actually had a contract. I've seen it. And for how many years, and having had all the challenges with an administration in this country in terms of contract management, and up to today, that woman is rather saying that we will not be surprised to hear that a French national dies in this country just because of frustration. It tells you that for some points, people see more of those who wear the wig and the gowns. They don't know that at the level of administration of justice by itself, there are people who are actually manipulating it and calling the strings. If you look at also at the level of the reaction after the meeting of the stakeholders in terms of diffusing the tension raised by the announced sit-down strike by the lawyer, you will see the communique that has been signed by some powerful administrators, from the Secretary of State of the Penitentiary Administration to the Delegate General of National Security, right down to other persons. Now, these are persons that from whatever, they might not have any direct role to play at the level of delay of delivery of justice. But you see now, even after the verdict is passed, the administration and the process is so confusive that at times you start asking, is it that the laws are so complicated that the average lawyer or the average magistrate does not know how to administer, especially when it is said that you administer for the magistrate, you declare or you pass judgment according to your conscience and the law. And you see how a whole core of people who are supposed to be very knowledgeable, like the lawyers, are also frustrated because they see the law and vis-a-vis in front of the administrators also, who are supposed to be the ones to administer the law, they are at variance in terms of seeing that same law is in application. Let me just conclude by saying that this morning I was reading something written by one human rights lawyer in this country, to be precise, Alice Com, who was actually challenging a former bâtonnier who was actually justifying that the military tribunal or the military court has a jurisdiction to judge civilians. And she actually brought out succinct points to challenge that stand. Now, if you see a former bâtonnier who will defend that the military tribunal has the authority to judge civilians, and then another lawyer start now to actually bring out some of the weaknesses that actually portrays that bâtonnier was not right, you start asking yourself, people of the same corps may interpreting the same law, the same constitution differently, and then you say, where does the common man go from here?
Okay, where does the common man go from here? When you look at the relationship between the lawyers, that is practicing the private sector, and those working for government, talking about magistrates and state councils, the way they have been treated, we've seen severally. They started with the Faculty Lawyers Association, who came up with protests, letters saying they were not well treated by their colleagues who are working for government. Do you think there is reason for those working for the government, magistrates and state councils to sit up so that these tensions that always exist between themselves, and it even ties with the call for the strike action now by the Bar Council?
The magistrate and the state council, they are an extension of the government.
Yeah.
They get orders from the government. They receive orders from the government. So their hands are tied. They only told the line of what government tells them to do. The lawyers are there fighting. The lawyers are professionals. They are fighting for their cause, to liberate the criminals in court. That is their function. To make sure that a fair trial, rule of law is being observed in court. But in the situation where the government gives instruction to the state council and magistrate to act against, to fight the lawyers, they find themselves in a very bad position. So I think the relationship between the government and the lawyers, private lawyers, it is not somehow good in this country. When we take into account how they beat lawyers in Buea, in their weeks, police came and got them well beaten. When lawyers are respected all over the world, but they were beaten. You see, in violation of their human right that they are protesting, which is their right to protest, but they were beaten. They use the high arm of government on them. So I think to say lawyers and magistrates, I think the lawyers in this country, their hands are tied. They don't have nothing to do. They only to let the government. Because even the big people that are corrupt, even the big guys in those called the bâtonniers and what have you, only God knows them how many amount of money exchange hands. Even these the call of strike, calling that only God knows whether some money are exchange hands. Only God knows. Even myself, I didn't take them serious. When I knew they will go on strike, I knew this strike will not hold because something will definitely happen, and it has happened. So we see the lawyers, some are very pragmatic, they love their job, but others are there frustrating them in the name of the Bar Council. So, and then you see, I mean, the whole thing, the judiciary itself is just a mix-up of contradictions and confusion between the government, the magistrate, and that's why I say he who pays the piper dictates the tune. The magistrate has no power in this country. Look even how they appoint magistrate in this country. Tribalism, favoritism, and what have you. They take one magistrate and make him a vice president of the High Court, without with little or no experience, because he has godfather somewhere who is protecting him. They say if you see a bird is dancing on the road, somebody is beating the drum for in the bush. Okay. That's the situation we have in this country.
Good afternoon in the studio. It's really hard to believe that this country is ruled by, not by the devil himself. People are in pain, and all these people see good to do is to add more pains on people. See, for example, my sister went to the market today to look for some food stuff for her sick dad who is in the house dying, and she was arrested, and as we talk, she's presently at Boya Road, Gendarmerie. Tell me how people won't go radical every day. I pray for our faith and that of this country. Metro from Kumba, right? Metro is writing from Kumba. Metro, actually tomorrow we are discussing the SDO's decision to lock Kumba down during this weekend. I'm sure you're going to send us contributions. This one says, good afternoon. In the studio, it's really hard to believe. Okay, Idris, writing from Kumba. Yes, because they don't have a free hand to handle judicial matters. They are always teleguided by the executive. The most aching issue here in Cameroon is the fact that the arms of government in this country don't even function separately. It's very unfortunate. It's a very unfortunate. Neighbor is writing from Kribi. Is the judiciary suffocating under the very strong arm of the executive? And if that is the case, is it out of ignorance or because they are helpless?
It is intentional.
Okay.
Because you can't tell me, take for instance the Procureur General, as they call it in French, or the Attorney General of the Southwest, and you are the State Council, and a case comes up and the Procureur General or the Attorney General call the State Council and say, put a hold on that file. There is just no way that the State Council can proceed with that case file, because his hierarchy has ordered him to put a hold on that file. And that is how it functions in this country. It ends there. The case dies there. You don't move an inch. You don't dare to proceed with the matter, because the hierarchy says put a hold there. So at one point they are helpless. At one point a good State Council is helpless, because the boss has asked him that I have interest in that file, put a hold on it. So the common man is dangling between the State Council is not in office today, or you are assigned to meet either the first, the second, or the fourth deputy, who will also tell you, my boss will have to order me to do this and do that. So the game keeps playing, and the common man, by the time you go several times, even when he leaves the State Council office to either the gendarmerie or it gets back to court, the same game is dancing, and the common man is defeated. The common man is left frustrated. And that is why at one point, people are even left with the option to say, okay, let us sympathize with those who want to call the shot in terms of joining their voices for government to hear them. So that is the level at which Cameroonians are now, to sympathize with those who they feel are courageous enough to go out. But this is not always the best option, because we can still look at means of how do we sort ourselves out without going to the extremes. So because things have been repeated on and on, okay, this is the second announced strike, or per se, that the lawyers are announcing. Whereas, if they had heeded the first one that they even wrote calmly and nicely, not even announcing a strike action, but yet they did not receive any letter of reception, of acknowledgement that we have received even what you sent. But I also laud the government for taking the move that, they have announced that something is coming up. Let us see how to discuss with them. As at now, we cannot tell. We are on the 8th of September. They have 8 more days to go. So between now and the 16th, anything can happen.
But we saw a note that was written by the Minister Delegate at the Ministry of Justice, Shanidi Mumu, instructing the regional personnel to sit up to make sure that they address.
We are used to these instructions. We are used to this ministerial order or arrêté or whatsoever you want to call it.
You want to see action?
Yes, we are used to them. What the lawyers want to see is that if they solicit to see their clients, they should be granted access. If they solicit to have information, they should be granted. If they solicit to do their job, we should not be here to say or to hear from now on that maybe a lawyer has been harassed, a lawyer has been beaten. Yes, we can wait for 8 days to pass and nothing happens, or they can give them that laxity to go back and see their clients and benefit from some of the things that they have raised. If it is not done, they will do this.
Okay.
The government can be nice to allow these 8 days to go, or to say that things are normal, or even give them a month. But after a month or two, they come back to the same issue. So we are talking about finding lasting solutions to all of this. Let the rule of law be observed, and we are all going to be fine.
Okay. This is Mr. Atanga from Kumba. Yes, it's a core source because it's not independent from the administration. We pray that the judiciary in Cameroon is going to sit up and live up to the expectations of the public. Since we have 3 topics to discuss today, we move over to the next topic. I start with you, Mofo, Mr. George. We talk about the former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, who died out there in Singapore. Many people describe him today as a hero turned villain. What do you say?
I say, in as much as all of us have our opinion about an individual, death is not something that we should celebrate, especially by saying things that we couldn't have said if the persons were still alive. And in terms of human appreciation for another human being, I have always said this: one man's human rights activist is another person's terrorist. You know, in the eyes of the common Zimbabwean, Mugabe is still seen as a hero in terms of how he actually challenged the colonialists from the bush to becoming its first independent leader, and also to the point where he had to also force an agreement, the Lancaster Agreement, which was supposed to have handed over the land back to the average Zimbabwean, that was taken by which was one of the conditions for the independence, which was not respected by the landowners. And so he insisted that that agreement should be enforced. Now you see again, this is where diplomacy comes in now, and you see how the Western media can actually vilify somebody who is against their interests, and you actually push the person out to be seen now like an enemy of its own people, and then use now a surrogate to actually challenge now that person who is actually admired by a greater majority of its people. But suffice to say, if we are looking for perfection from a human being, it's not on this earth. And just as like any other human being, Mugabe had his own weaknesses. But I think that if we put it on a scale, we'll see that he has more positives than negatives.
Okay, he has more positive than negatives according to you. Though I would have loved you to enumerate some of them. I'll get back to you to tell us those positive and negatives. I want you to describe Mugabe from the democratic perspective.
Yes.
You saw his relationship with Morgan Tsvangirai. Severally, he was forced to even work with him for some time. When he came to power, he came alongside another rebel leader, they call him, I'm sure,
Joshua Nkomo.
You saw the way he dealt with him. You think from the democratic perspective, he was a good Democrat?
Yeah, I think I salute Mugabe. Because Zimbabwe is Mugabe. Mugabe is Zimbabwe.
Wow.
Because the way he ferociously fought Ian Smith of Rhodesia, the white minority leader, nobody could have expected that.
Okay.
Because, and he did not even fight them alone. He has other supporters. He has Joshua Nkomo, Dabaningi Sitole, and Bishop Albert Muzorewa.
Yeah.
They together fought Ian Smith with assistance from Nigeria financially, materially, and morally.
They were lost in Mozambique?
Yes, they were lost in Mozambique. You see, he gave Ian Smith the toughest time of his life. Mugabe, they killed all his family. He has no family in Zimbabwe. All they killed by the white man, by Ian Smith. Mugabe stood alone, fought for his people. And today, when I say Zimbabwe is Mugabe, all the military, all the police, everybody is the making of Mugabe. So Mugabe is not a no-nonsense politician when it comes to African politics. People must not understand this. Look at the way he drove Ian Smith. After that, he redistributed land back to his people.
In the early 2000s.
All to his people, because all the rich parts of land were owned by the minority whites. He told them to go back to the country. They said this is the country, but he said this is Zimbabwe. And he distributed those land to his people. And then you can see again, look at the Lancaster House Agreement taken by former British Secretary Lord Soames and Obasanjo of Nigeria over the eminent person group. You see, he made them to, as Mufo said, he made them to respect that agreement for the sharing of land. You see, the Western European nations, the moment you start attacking their white colleagues, saying to undermine them, they vilify you. They fabricate and foment false allegations against you, and just to deal with you. They start attacking the Zimbabwe economy. Frustrated, they will not give him aid. They will not give financial assistance because he has driven all the whites in South Africa, or most of them have gone back to Britain. So you see, I think at the end of his regime, he misfired a bit by trying to make his wife to replace him as president. But all the economic problems that Zimbabwe faced towards the end of Mugabe was the economic sanction imposed to him by the Western European nations. They frustrated him. They did all they could to make sure that he did not succeed. He should be a failure. But towards the end, my problem with Mugabe is when he started saying that the wife should replace him as president, which is undemocratic. I didn't like that one. And even when he was not even overthrown. He was even told to go and rest. He was, because all those guys know that he's the father of the nation. He should go and rest. They took him somewhere and kept him, and they changed, and the government continues. So I think, in my own opinion, I think Mugabe is a hero when it comes to Africa, because he has set example for so many Africans. First, he was not corrupt. He has no foreign bank account. You see, he was keeping his money in the country. Everybody know how much he was paid. The guy was very transparent and rational in the administration of his country. So I think no matter towards the end of the government, he ate a bit, but I think I can give him 95% as a good man. Okay,
you can give him, you have the same impression of...
Well, definitely, Leonard, I know in Africa, when somebody is no more, everybody wants to speak good about him. But I feel that with what Robert Gabriel Mugabe did in his country, Mohamed Sule said Mugabe is Zimbabwe and Zimbabwe is Mugabe. Well, he's right in that opinion. And every ordinary Zimbabwean will look at Mugabe as this was our hero. This was the person who considered us. Now, my first take is that Mugabe at one point is even noted to be one of those presidents who are highly educated, with 18 degrees. You can fact check that. And this, he transmitted it to his people. Zimbabweans are very educated. And if you see what is happening today in South Africa, it's not because there are no jobs. It's not because South Africa hasn't got job opportunities. It's because South Africa has also got the highest rate of school dropouts, 60% as we speak. But Zimbabweans are so educated, and most of the jobs and most of the investors in South Africa, you don't want to give your company to somebody who is not educated. So South Africa, or South Africans, most of them are getting angry with what happens today in their own country because they can't get this job. Not because they are not eligible, because they are not educated. So Robert Mugabe understood this and encouraged his people to be educated. So most of the high-paid jobs, if you go down to South Africa, are run by Zimbabweans because it's just next door anyway. That's just one point talking about education. Because he was educated, he saw the need for his people to be educated. So he even studied in South Africa as well. Come to think of it, or to mention the issue of the seizure of land. Took it from the whites and gave it back to his own people. Other people in authority would have confiscated his lands to themselves, would have put the names of their family members there. But he said the original people in Zimbabwe should also have access to this land. And I think Cameroon also benefited from that initiative by saying, okay, the lands which CDC had, you should also give it back to the communities. And which, if you go down to Fagot today, many communities are happy because these were their property, and now it has come back to them, and now development has also taken root in some of these communities. Though we are also aware of the manipulation that it takes to get some of these lands back to the community. But I feel that it was a good move, and I am sure in somehow, some way, Cameroon also copied from that initiative that the people must be empowered. If they have their lands, they can cultivate it, they can develop their communities, and they can live wealthy. Now, on the issue of crime, Mugabe also worked hard in containing crime in Zimbabwe. South Africa is known as the world deadliest city in terms of crimes. But look at next door Zimbabwe. He put in strong mechanism to control the use of firearms. It is difficult for you to walk around with arms because policing is very tight. So we feel these are some of the things that Zimbabweans could die for him. Only during his last days, he acted the way he did. Of course, at that age 95, you cannot be so sure of what you decide. Somebody must be asking you to do certain things which you can't reason properly anyway. Now, some have even likened him to Fidel Castro as someone who stood against world power, who stood against the influence of European and America. So he is also considered in that domain to say, let us give power to the African man. Let us conserve what we have. And to that point, you want to also classify him as someone who was thinking African, who was feeling the fact that Africans should be given the pride of place to manage their own affairs. Now, he fought hard against white racism. He is also behind the formation of the SADC, of course, which was later known as the non-aligned movement, to let us build our own bloc that we can control our own economy. So
yeah,
these are some of the achievements which we
both have raised the issue of the land distribution scheme, where he took land from the dominant, the minority whites, and gave it back to the dominant black. But some people think that he took this and the land was misused because Zimbabweans did not get richer from the land distribution process scheme.
Again, this is the trap of the Western media.
Okay.
Because you see again, we are here talking about manipulation, and what people call it's a very good press way that you guys use it in your language. When you want to seek for favor and you want to advocate for one of your supporters, you vilify your opponent to the point. I just want to let us know that Mugabe might, as an individual, might have left the scene physically and even spiritually, but he is still very much alive, because even the gentleman who is still the president now is still, as we used the local language in Cameroon, a creature of
yes, Moses Henchman is a close collaborator.
So he might have left the stage just like any of us will leave when the time comes, because nobody is eternal on earth. His legacy, his actions, his philosophy will still remain. And don't forget, we forget the instance that, to buttress one of the things that Agorem said, you will be surprised that there is a school in Boya called today Baptist High School. Then it used to be called BBSS, where a lot of Zimbabwean students during the struggle, they were sent out to go to anywhere that they can get education. Some came to Boya, some went to GT, what is called today Government Technical High School in Muliko. We had a lot of Zimbabweans hosted by Cameroonian families and all of that. It tells you that the people actually prepare themselves for ownership of whatever. And again, you were talking about seizure of land. It is not actually, was a justice that was administered, because it was part of the agreement for the independence, which was negotiated during the Lancaster House deal. So it was because the other powerful farmers, who were generally Europeans, did not respect through their protector, the United Kingdom, to see that what was agreed in that Lancaster House agreement was actually implemented according to the letter. So, and Mugabe said, this is what was agreed and we have to implement it. Now, you see again, I've always said, no doubt land is the most important element for agricultural development. But when you have land and you don't have the right input to be able to valorize that land, it is as a golden ring on the nose of a pig. So it is unfortunate that Zimbabwe relied again on something that it was not consumed in Zimbabwe. You know, this notion of cash crops, whereby the colonialists went away and they gave us some type of mentality that we have some crops we call cash crops. Unfortunately, paradoxically, those are the crops that are even impoverishing most of Africa. You produce what you don't consume, and you consume what you don't
Not
produce.
even considered, Mr. George. Even these cash crops, they come and buy the cash crops, transform it to to finished products and sell even now to us higher than even what they bought
That's
from
what I'm
us.
saying. And if you imagine that the principal cash crop of Zimbabwe was the tobacco, and again, you will be surprised that we are here promoting a crop that it should be instead fast tracking our health to kill us faster and all of that. So, and you see again, it also probably deliberately or unconsciously, Zimbabwe relied on that tobacco cultivation to a point where it became the principal source of its revenue. And that is why when they had those sanctions imposed on them, it became now an issue of the first thing, absence of food. Mm-hmm. Because the average person will not survive without food, and so they saw that as the softest spot to push the average Zimbabwean to go on the street, and then they use people like Changirai as a surrogate to be able to act now like.
And those were also the things that accounted for the high inflation rates in Zimbabwe, which we all know as well.
When we talk about, and don't forget, Zimbabwe, come to think about it, they had food independence because they had their own currency. And so the British saw all of that as something which was really an affront to their colonial legacy and all of those things. And they didn't take that lightly. So, all said and done, you know, one of the things I was just thinking about when they talk about longevity in power, and I start asking myself, but is it not the African tradition that you can have a traditional leader, he rules until he dies? Where is this democracy of a Western civilization that comes in and we just drank it totally and say that people should be old enough not to be able to be leader? Well, I know again, this might also incite some people to start thinking, hey, there he goes again. But I think that when a leader is good and the people are accepting what he is providing, that leader should be made to rule until if he decides otherwise. But again, once we have an agreement and it is applied, let people not come now and use it now against the same people for whom it was supposed to be for their benefit in order to turn against the same persons. Because even since, if you look at it, since the Mnangagwa came to power and the rest, you will discover that the tensions have actually lessened. But it's still part of his legacy continuing.
Let me get this reaction from Baka Derek. He's one of us in our forum. Bamenda Beast, though he's in Douala now, he's watching the program. We would have loved him to be part of us today. He says Mugabe died in a different country simply because he failed to make Zimbabwe modern. He stole the money of Zimbabwe to develop another country with facilities everywhere out of Zimbabwe. He died a selfish Pan-Africanist who was fighting the colonialists for his interests and not the interests of Zimbabweans. You said all the nice things about him, yes. But do you think somewhere that Mugabe also got...
keep the money? He didn't say where Mugabe keep the money. He said he stole money.
No, but why did he die in Singapore and not in Zimbabwe?
He went for medical checkup.
Why did he not construct the best hospitals in Zimbabwe?
That's why he went for a country that were in good relation. You don't go to a country you're not in good relation.
Why did he not build the best?
Because he was frustrated. He was frustrated with the white. They blocked him all the way.
But let me just say something related to that. You know, again, you don't just build a hospital targeting one person. You build a hospital, take into consideration the needs of your community at that time.
Okay. According to the findings I made myself, it states that the life expectancy of Zimbabweans at the time he took office, that was in 1980, stood at 60 years. Yes. But as we speak, by the time he left, it had dropped to 37 for men and 34 for women.
Yes, I agree. Mm-hmm. I'm not contesting those figures because of the harsh economic problem that was imposed for him by the Western Union. They blocked virtually everything. Any health services was blocked.
For how long did Mugabe rule?
He ruled for almost 40-something years.
Yeah.
So Mugabe, I think the people they brought Changala in to challenge him, and he defeated Changala democratically. The Western European nation thought that they could bring Changarai to
Why don't you think that there are Zimbabweans who are tired? How do you rule a country for 40 years?
The Western European nation even planned to stage a coup against Mugabe.
No,
they couldn't do it because
away from the West. How do you rule a nation for 40 years and you think the love will be same like you just took it in 1980s?
It cannot be same. It cannot be same, Kum Leonard, and I feel that if we even look at the late Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, Libyans will tell you this was the person who did a lot for us. Other African countries could equally copy from what he was doing in Libya, but with the geopolitics and opinions from Western world and with the projects which he had for Africa, we all know what transpired to and led to his death, you know. But again, people will always be instigated to take certain actions, thinking that it is a national idea, not knowing that it has been influenced. And if you even follow some of the things that happened with Zimbabwe, they were blocked from all corners. And as the president, you have to take the shock because you are the one leading the country. The ordinary man will not understand that you cannot import this quantity of rice anymore because you have an issue with the next country. What he wants is he goes to the mall and he can buy rice, or he can buy the some household commodities at the price which is affordable. But you cannot explain to everybody that we cannot get this because there is an economic sanction against the country. And if no matter how long or how often you explain that to your countrymen, there will still be people who will not be satisfied with what you do. But I feel that Mugabe, as a president, that the life he led in Zimbabwe at least impacted the local Zimbabweans, and we also feel that it's a matter of the constitution. If the constitution of the country says you have this term in office, and if you have 2-3 terms, it bounces back on the other countries on how we should develop our constitution. So if you feel like what Mr. Mofo said, traditional rulership is not like a constitution that okay, he will be on the throne for 5 years. No, it is, some communities say it is hereditary, some say it is rotatory. So what obtains in your community obtains that way. So the traditional ruler can be there for life.
What are you saying about Mugabe here?
Mugabe here,
he was supposed to be president for life.
Well, if that's what their constitution says, then he knew that he is working constitutionally. But if it wasn't the case, then people had the right to say,
but do you see like Bakar Derrick that to some point he was selfish, not wanting to give opportunity for others?
He's putting him there, Mr. Leo. His party, the whole convention, and the party put him as president.
President Paul Biya is right to say that Cameroonians want him to be there.
Well, it's to an extent because his party is putting him there.
And not everybody is of the party.
Yeah, of the party. So,
Mofo George, can we say that his wife was his tragic flaw?
Yeah.
In governance.
You know, again, I always tell you that I always avoid answering questions the yes or no. With the novel rationality, that it depends. You know, even if you look at the Bible, you also see very powerful persons who have been brought down by their wives for 1 or 2
like Samson.
And all of that. So, I think we should not lose sight of one particular element, especially the neighbors of Zimbabwe. Because up to now, I'm asking myself, when the Europeans, especially the Commonwealth and the rest, they were imposing those sanctions
on Zimbabwe,
and most of the opponents of Zimbabwe, they were running back to South Africa. Did South Africa had a hidden hand to be used also to because when we're talking about African solidarity, and we just made mention here that before Zimbabwe had independence, it was thanks to material and moral support from a country like Nigeria. You know, in one of the photographs, they were showing pictures of Murtala Mohammed and Obasanjo, who played very, very serious role in the late 70s to push ahead the negotiation for independence of an independent Zimbabwe. And if you look like the clamor at that time, especially with a charismatic musician like a Bob Marley, who sang this popular reggae tune of Africa shall liberate Zimbabwe, and all of those things. Yes. Then you find at some particular moment Africans behave as if they were all being hooked by some European partners, and today we are seeing that 40 years or for those countries who had independence since 1960, we have not still learned our lessons that at some point in time Africa still has to take its destiny, and all of these things about African integration, African unity can only make meaning when Africa starts seeing a problem in one geographical space, like the problem of Africa. And I'm not sure Zimbabwe and Mugabe in particular had the support of the African neighbors when he needed them most.
Okay, it's not.
I just want to quickly, Leonard, on Derek's opinion. You know, everyone has a right to invest anywhere you want. If he invested in Singapore and he feels that it was quite good for him to go there for health, for medical care, I think nobody's restricted to getting medical care wherever you wish if you have the means. Well, we also have so very good hospitals in Cameroon, but every now and then we have our own authorities who go out for medical care. It's all about choice and the means which you have to, you can get them in your country, but your choice is that I should get it elsewhere, which I feel is better and comfortable. He was still a political figure, mark you that, and the opposition is still in the country. They try to play their way so that they don't get into a trap of whosoever, so they get to the best and also to be safe.
Judge Mr. Mufo spoke very little about the wife of Mugabe. You think that she contributed to...
Yeah, Mugabe, towards the end, he has two flaws. First, he fell apart with his vice president, who later became the president, Mnangagwa. You see, secondly, the wife. You see, but he would have gone back to the party. See, those that he fought the war together, they struggled together, the liberation movement together, to select somebody out to represent the party than to bring his wife on in. That was unexpected of Mugabe to behave like that. He will have looked at the party, look those who have fought the struggle, the very way the liberation movement, and bring somebody there. Though most of them ran to South Africa because of the economic crisis that bedeviled Zimbabwe. But again, there were some still hardcore ZANU-PF members in the party that Mugabe would have used than to use his wife. That was
dear friends, I just want to reflect on otherwise. If it was not Grace who was selected and another woman, would they have had the same impact? Because to me, I've seen it as women evolution and women's empowerment and all of that. I think unfortunately it happened that coincidentally it was Mugabe's wife. But what happened if it was another woman who was also an activist? And
no, he sent away Mnangagwa because he saw Mnangagwa was more powerful than the wife. He sent and against after he was
and that caused his downfall.
Yes, when they brought Mnangagwa to be the president. You see, he was the most competent person to be the president, but he wanted to impose his wife. That's where he ate. And it's very unfortunate for him. I know he collapsed how many times? More than how many times he collapsed. So I think his mentality was not as the same. Right. So I think
he needed rest.
He needed rest. So
okay.
I think
he needed rest. But I want us to talk about how truly Pan-African Mugabe was. Let me take this one from Kumba. My name is Lovett. I'm right now in the city of Kumba. God bless you people. In the media house, we are just thinking of this country. It's a lawless one. We run to the government, we still have problems. We run over this way, problems. Where can one run to in Cameroon? We don't have church today in Kumba because of lawless town and the government. The SDO are making a lot of mistakes. They are of the people, not against the people. We don't have good rulers in this country. No human hearts in them that are called to rule God's people. We feel your pain. You who is watching us from Kumba. Tomorrow is a special program on Prime Hour. We are going to focus on Kumba. This one says, hello, my media prime. Hello to you too. Billy Bob Lifungo, who is watching us from Bonaberry in Douala now. It's a point of correction, sir. Mugabe never won Morgan Tsvangirai democratically. Even the last election between him and Morgan, he lost the first round and became more tyrannical. to the point where Morgan had to desist to run for the second round. I'm sure he himself acknowledged that he lost the election, but he was not ready to step down because, according to him, Morgan Tsvangirai was a Western
puppet.
Yes, the facts are clear. Mugabe was never a good leader. He ruined Zimbabwe because he was selfish. We all saw what he wanted to do with his wife Grace. Okay. Billy, thank you for that contribution. Good morning, people of God. The action taken by the SDU government delegate of Kumba is not good because they taught people to do what they cannot do. What I want to say is that they want to use the population, their umbrella in front of the government. Ndia Ndinta, writing from Kribi, I want us to look at how truly Pan-African Mugabe was. It is true. Is it enough to go to insult the West every day to prove the fact that you are a Pan-Africanist? What has he done concretely to show that he's Pan-African?
Well, let me react quickly. I think first of all, I come to the contributions from the televiewers. I will beg to differ that Cameroon is not lawless. Cameroon is a state of law, but we have the issue of how we apply and implement this law on the ground. So the laws are there, but people, due to their positions and appointments, decide to apply and implement the law in their own way. So we have laws in this country, and every state is governed by a set of laws, and we are also governed by our constitution, which is a legal document. Now, Pan-Africanism, late Robert Mugabe, it doesn't suffice that if you blast the West all the time, you are a Pan-Africanist. No. We understand how economies function. We know of you have your ally. You have friendly states and nations that you collaborate and work with. In as much as you have those friendly states and allies, you also have certain principles which you should protect as a sovereign state, as a nation. But coming to the implementation on how Robert Mugabe viewed this in his perspective as an individual, you could also be acting, or he acted, because of what he has gone through, because of what he has seen, because of what he witnessed, how the Western world tormented his people, and they needed a liberator from his own perspective. Reason why he felt that he had to act, he felt that he had to act the way he acted even before he died. So it's not an issue of having a disregard for the West that makes you a Pan-Africanist. You should be able to see that. What are the things that are good for my people in line with our culture and tradition? Zimbabwe was one of those countries that kicked out to rectify the issue of homosexuality, because he knew that this cannot work in my community and this is not African. So I feel that we should not copy things because we benefit economically from one nation or the other. We should be able to see how
completely did he promote the oneness of Africa?
No, what you want to see is that first, Mugabe fought the Bush War to get independence. So Zimbabwe has no Independence Day. Nobody gave them independence. They fought their war.
How does that unite Africa?
I'm coming.
Okay.
One, he loved his people. He loved his country. He fought for non-alignment to protect and promote African interests. That's why he started getting problem with the West. He even supported Gaddafi's idea of one African currency.
He supported. What did he do? What did he do?
He backed it up because he said using Western European currency does not actually show total independence.
Now I know at the level of sloganeering.
Let me come.
Yes.
Secondly, you see, what this my young man said.
Solomon.
We are living in an interdependent world. You are not an island. You must collaborate and cooperate with other people to enhance growth and develop your country. Especially that we're in the capitalist world. We're in the capitalist world because they are fighting always to suppress socialism or communism. And Mugabe has socialist ideas in his head. But that will not have made him to fall apart with the West. He will have aligned himself with the West to relate them to some extent. so that he can get what he wants.
Yeah, consistently, Mugabe has stood against the West. He has made very profound.
That was a very big error for him to go against the West totally. He would have.
My question stands. I want us, because Mbako Jude reacting to what Mbako Jude is one of our panelists here, reacting to Baka Derek. He says, good one. He says, my Pan-Africanist now is Paul Kagame, and I want us to go back to Billy Bob, who is also a panelist here. He says that would be the benefit for the imposed lockdown by the SDO of Meme. Ben is writing in from Douala, but I want us to go back to Billy Bob, who is contributing from Bonaberi, Douala. He says, yes, Mugabe fought for Zimbabwe's independence. That's all. Mugabe killed his longtime friend Joshua Nkomo just after independence, and more than 20,000 civilians from Como's region. Even the land redistribution never went well because he gave it to his friends and allies, like what the Bakweri chiefs are doing.
No,
he silenced everyone who opposed his ideology. He was a fighter, but never a Democrat. Billy Bob is writing from.
I disagree with you.
Let me make a quick reaction. To Billy Bob.
You have to defend the chiefs.
No, defending the chief. I speak with what I have witnessed. I speak with what the documents I have seen, and with the findings I have also made. It could happen with a few communities, but the general notion is that, like in Fako division, villages are made of families.
Yes.
And once some of this land is ceded, the chief calls the families of that village. If there are 5 families, he calls them. Okay, we have this chunk of land that has been given to the community, and it is divided amongst the families. Yes, the chief may have some of the parcel bigger than the other families, because it takes a lot of process to process that land, and a lot of processes to have that land to be handed, and a lot of activities. You have to fair the palms, you have to create roads, create streets, and all of that. The community agrees that, okay, we give him this because of the cost he incurred to prepare the land for us. So it's a matter of families. There could be villages where there's just one family, and if Kumlenat is part of the family of the village, and I give him, and he calls his friends in America and gave it to them, or sold it to them, it is not that the chief gave it to those people. Because people fail to understand these basic principles on how these things are done. We feel that the chiefs have given land and sold it to whosoever they want to sell. But if you go deeply, if it is not coming from the other camp that is not happy with whosoever is on the throne, but when it comes to land distribution, it's orderly done, because the forces of law and order are also monitoring what happens in the land distribution. So I feel that at some point, some villages may have those things because the chief wants to play a fast one on the communities. But if you go to communities that understand how it is done, families benefit from it.
I have not to add more for what he said. To add more for what he said.
Yes.
Are the Bakweri chiefs being subsidized by the people? Where do they get money to run their children? So they have to sell some parcel of land to get money to run their children. That does not mean that you have to deprive the younger generation of land. No, but you have to sell some few land to get money to run your children, because they are not being subsidized by their subjects. As compared to other chiefs we see in other places, in the Northwest and Southwest, that their chiefs are being subsidized. So they have to sell some piece of land to maintain their kingdom. Not all, but some.
So after the land is sold, what happens?
They take the money to run the kingdom and maintain and leave other land for.
It's not even selling. It's an agreement from the traditional council that says, okay, we give this parcel to carry on this development project.
But for Mr. George,
we cannot also.
Mr. George, I'm sure you're not very comfortable.
We can also wave aside the fact that some people will manipulate the funds that come in. But it is usually a process to get to that
action. You guys have not, I don't know whether you people have parcels of land.
No, it was a clarification we are making, because it's an educative panel. People
let me suggest.
The question that I asked, which was how Pan-African was Mugabe. You see, Pan-Africanism as a philosophy can be interpreted in different dimensions through the food you eat, the dressing in public occasions, and how you mobilize your people in terms of even the content of the education that you give to allow to be given to your citizens.
Your citizens.
Because I'm still to look at it from the perspective whether Mugabe actually stayed away from any African Union summit, because that is actually supposed to be the crucible of where most of the African thoughts and ideologies are built.
Crafted.
And you see again, whether I like it or not, democracy is a Western concept. It's a Western concept to the point where you find that even an almighty China, the West still think that they might have all what it takes in terms of economic wealth. They don't have that type of multiple candidates for elections, for who become president of China.
Human rights.
They are still.
That's the backward.
A developing country.
They are still, yes, good. That's the word they use. So the point here, and which is a bit of a paradox, you know, of what they call the Harare Declaration.
Yeah, sure.
This was the heart of what the Commonwealth used to be able to be measuring Africans in terms of their human rights respect vis-a-vis their population leaders and their population and all of that. And if Mugabe of all would have hosted the Commonwealth and allowed that such a declaration comes out from the country, that will someday turn around again, that same declaration will be used, because the Commonwealth sanctioning was based on that declaration where they accused him of human rights abuse and so on and so forth. But all said and done, I keep on still saying that, you see, 95 years and 40 plus years as a leader minus the years that you spent in the bush. In fact, yesterday somebody was making a comment, and which has just been said there by one of us, that he has about 18 certificates. Amongst those certificates, he has 4 PhDs.
Can imagine.
It tells you that it was not anything that he was doing anyhow. Yeah. He has a rational base, and there was a philosophy why he was doing the things that he was doing. And he was using that as an icon for the rest of the people, that you don't spend all their life on a confrontation without also building your capacity in terms of
how you can we have to move. We have to move away from Robert Mugabe. We are going to join the people of Zimbabwe to follow up developments as far as his funeral is concerned. Another special edition is going to be done for him in the course of our programs. This one says, a lazy man will always complain about his tools. The state magistrates and the lawyers are the same platform, but the lawyers complain because their learned colleagues know those tricks. I had a matter that took 3.5 years because of adjournments. In the course of this, I saw many people who have been there for years. Anyone who wants to know them better should read Luke 11:46 downwards. Then you know who those people are. Look at the crisis we are in today. They are the cause. Okay, he says the lawyers.
No, but it's true. What is
the cause?
Yes. Some of the flaws of the lawyers. They go for excessive adjournments. And when they ask for excessive adjournment,
so
the client suffers. They ask for taxi money, petrol money. Some of them ask for feeding money.
Even when they say they are doing pro bono. They say pro bono.
You must see some of the flaws of the lawyers.
Okay. Happy Sunday to you all in the media house. May God bless you. Celia is writing from Bonaberry. Thank you, Celia. I think Billy Bob still has something to say. He's not very comfortable with what you guys are saying out here. Let me just take his reaction and we continue. This one says, you people should stop singing the praise of a dictator. Europeans tormented Zimbabweans. Mugabe took over and was worse tormentor to Zimbabweans than the whites. Mala is writing from Douala here. This one says, Sir, I am Bakuri man 100%. You don't even know what you are saying. Please don't instigate our angers to rise again. we are already calm concerning the FACO land distribution. I'm sure we are also, we are also going to be discussing the FACO land issue in the days ahead. But let's end with our last topic for today, which has to do with the lawyers. We are asking whether the lawyers can play the game-changing factor in Cameroon. We saw what the lawyers did and where we are today with the Anglophone crisis. They are calling for a strike action. They had a meeting with the government officials. Are they going to pull through with their called plan strike action? But let's ask ourselves: can the lawyers change the game in Cameroon's political and socio-cultural efforts to want to bring change? Can the lawyers change the game plan in Cameroon?
Again, they can, because looking at it as one of those socio-professional structure whereby there is what you might call high volume of intellectual material in terms of the global. If you look at most, if not 60-75% of the presidents who have actually ruled America and ruled it well, they came from the legal background. And also, you know, the lawyers actually, most of the time, if you look at the contemporary stories in Cameroon, and you see a former prime minister, a former SG, sees his lawyer now as his last hope, based on the level of defense that he can actually provide to him in front of the judge, or even negotiating with the powers that be to see how they can interpret or look at what has taken them where they are today and use some of those mitigating circumstances to liberate them and all of that, which though it is not evident now that is the case. But I, for one, I have always said that court cases in Cameroon has never been a solution to most of the instances, because even if you go to the court and you are declared the winner, the process of even getting your due is another headache, to a point where you start regretting that it would have been better that you settle this thing out of the court than actually taking to. Today I sat in a meeting with some lawyers, and they were actually saying that they will see their clients actually negotiating with the judge in terms of bypassing some of the normal, because Cameroon is supposed to be operating on what especially those criminal cases on the criminal procedure code. But you discover that the litigant at times becomes so impatient that instead of waiting for their lawyers to follow the process right to its end, they use now other means. Either they look for monies and they buy their way, and also justice now in Cameroon is more of bought like a commodity. And you find that the poor man now suffers, because, again, for you to even see, you just made mention here that some of the lawyers claim most of the time that they are doing a case pro bono. But at the end of the day, they ask you to provide fuel, they ask you to provide hotel bills and all of those things, which are some of those things which ordinarily is not easy. In fact, to end with my own input here, when somebody was analyzing, I think one of the lawyers who always participate in this panel was analyzing how those diasporans who have been collecting monies for this Anglophone fight, how the money has been spent. I think a very big chunk was used for the cases that is being processed today in the courts. I don't know for what for. Probably was also for payment or compensation, expecting the lawyers to move from one end to another. And you also saw, talking about game changer, you see that even some of the lawyers who started when the case was just initiated, now they are falling out. What we are told now, it's a disagreement between the lawyer and the client. But among the lawyer themselves, when you ask the person now who is like the lead counsel, he will say, no, that's the decision of his colleagues are for purpose of professional solidarity, he cannot criticize him because that is his choice. So there is much more that meets the eye of what happens behind the legal scene amongst the lawyers.
Okay, amongst the lawyers, when you look at the lawyers, are they living up to the expectations from Cameroonians? We see that Cameroonians say, okay, politicians have failed us, the lawyers can take us out of our misery.
The law profession is a noble profession. Mm-hmm. And secondly, it is assumed for the sake of assuming that the lawyers know the law. Mm-hmm. So whatever thing they're doing must be dictated by the law. Mm-hmm. They should not go against the law. That is the general assumption of people outside about lawyers. Mm-hmm. So that if they are given opportunity to rule, maybe they might rule the country very well because they cannot go against the law or alter vice. But when you see in practical terms, now it's the matter of survival of the fittest. Mm-hmm. Now it's the matter of survival of the fittest. Every lawyer is trying to grab as much as possible to make himself fine. Because the circumstances they happen to find themselves.
So the interest of the people is no longer there.
Yes, it's difficult. Not that it's not there. It is not there, but the circumstances where they operate is very difficult for them to actually satisfy the wishes and aspirations of their clients. Mm-hmm. So you see that I think if lawyers are given the opportunity as game changers to actually follow the law, do things in conformity with the law, I think this country will be better off.
Have they helped shape our national life? Look at what the lawyers have done so far in Cameroon.
I think with the happenings for the past 3 years, we can say yes, Cameroonians can say a few things have changed. I wish to quote practically the use of both languages. If the lawyers were not up with their first outing, we wouldn't have ministers today that we never thought they could speak a word in English, addressing an audience today almost from start to finish with using the English language. So I feel that we can be able to see some practical changes which have come in due to the actions taken by lawyers at one point. And we wish this to multiply. It should not only end within their core. We are looking at the educational sector. We are looking at the business sector. Yes, we know the OHADA law was also clamored for, but to my understanding, so far so good. I don't feel they have completed the translation of that OHADA law, and it's applicable already in some of the courts from the common law setting. So there's still a lot of follow-up which needs to be done. And of course, the implementation of what is enshrined in the Constitution of Cameroon. So I feel that if they pick up such initiative and follow them strategically, we can count on them. Cameroonians can count on them. Cameroonians can still look up to them to be those that can create that change. Though, in our context, they still clamor for the respect and honor which should due them. Because I don't see the reason why you should approach an individual and he or she introduces himself or herself as a legal practitioner and you cause harm on that person. It goes beyond my imagination. I think a certain decorum should accompany certain personalities as per those who are called upon to be the forces of law and order.
Okay, most of our panelists are actually taking part. Moke Eban, we're glad to know that you are following up and you've decided to share. She is a teacher by profession. She's been part of our discussions in previous editions. She says, good afternoon, Leonard and panel members. Beautiful program there. Hot panelists reacting with strong points to the present situation in Zimbabwe. For Kumba, to me, the SD of Kumba took a wrong decision. People cannot be dying and you encourage death. That's being heartless. He should better rethink. You cannot be heavily protected by the military and expect civilians with no protection to go on with their activities. Mukeban writing from Bonamusadi in Douala. Please, if you are watching us wherever you are, tomorrow on Prime Hour, we are going to be looking at the lockdown. We assess 1 week of lockdown including the 2 days imposed on the people of Meme by the senior divisional officer of that division. We have to draw the curtains of the program at this juncture. We are very happy for those who took part, especially you who sent text messages. We are glad to have you on the program. Mufo, Mr. George.
Thank you so much, and I hope we've been able to add value to the afternoon of the viewers. Well, let me just say this to the lawyers, that respect is earned. Once a lawyer plays what they call two-side collars, that is the beginning of losing the admiration of the public, which means that they want to see consistency in their acts and in their actions.
Okay, we want to thank you to Mr. Suleiman, all the way from Kumba. Are you going to be part of the program tomorrow, since we are discussing?
Yes, I'll be here.
Okay, so he's taking a commitment to be here tomorrow.
Yes, so all I will say to my Kumba people, a luta continua, Victoria Isata.
Okay, thank you to all the way from Limbe.
Thank you, Kum. It's always a pleasure to exchange ideas with members of the panel, and to also share our own contribution in nation building and development. I think to a quick reaction to one of our televiewers who said he's a Bakwarian, there is nothing wrong in copying from good models. I think if a community is performing, we can always copy from them. And it's a community action. And I feel that in whatever way we find ourselves, we should always seek peaceful resolution.
I think the televiewer expects the chiefs to be equitable in the way they do the distribution.
Yes, they should be equitable. They should be humane.
That's what.
And the communities should also understand that it is their community. Whatever development comes there, it benefits, if not them, the future generation.
Okay, we want to thank you who took time to watch us, especially the technicians. It's a Sunday, but they are here to serve us all. Desmond, we are grateful for your selfless service. And to you too, Eli, we are immensely grateful to your know-how. You ensure that you produce most of the programs out here. And to you, Tabi, Tambe, Bryant, many bosses are enjoying in Kribi, in Limbe, but you are always around to ensure that work is going on smoothly out here. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.